such a interesting day. I am. I apologize. We have. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. How you doing? Yeah, no worries. That was just a long time with another one, right? So there was another. It was a restart that started that. Right. Yeah.
And it just kind of.
Those things should be handled individually.
Sit down by the way, my car's locked up with more securely than the courthouse at this point.
Okay, yeah, recognize your face. Yeah, they're really good. What helps? Robotic runs that.
Yeah, I'm trying to get but they don't have facilities
for the replacement.
the chief.
Portable.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be.
I know, it was so funny. My phone.
It's nice.
There's a
Are you seeing Ted tomorrow?
I'll wait for the water to kick
Why do you all the test? By yourself?
Oh, there she is.
Hey, nice chatting with you, Paul.
I was going to say, I'm not used to seeing Tony sit here by himself. I was going to say that they came in and like got sandwiched. How's Chris doing after this? I haven't seen her since.
She's doing okay. I mean, if you drop her a line, she would love to just about that. I mean, she still doesn't get therapy.
It was her shoulder, right?
Yeah. And I don't think it's good.
She had the
Challenge for game of tennis.
Yeah.
The only way I can beat her.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So she's still in therapy. They're gonna have to make a decision at some point.
Oh, there you go. I get a lot of
Was it mistreated so?
the training thing says logging issues, equipment needing to play.
You can imagine she's not.
Oh no, I can't imagine. Is she still able to do anything like run?
I know she does do some limited running.
Montgomery County.
Yeah, I mean she can. Yes, I think she can do some
Pretty good.
You can see her back, but nonetheless.
I mean, you don't want to say especially.
Right, no, it's
Especially someone like her. She's so active. Some people would bother her. I can't run, I can't.
No, I mean that's
I did not.
That's her.
Couldn't
imagine.
Yeah, so she's not never.
I'm glad to hear
I mean, she's not
moving parts. Crosshairs. Like literally this example would also do.
So if you drop her a line, just tell her, come for a game of tennis.
They do, and everybody gets.
If she comes to beat my ass,
Yeah, I mean, I think she'll be fine.
I won't be, because I'll be at the tennis.
Just about her first name.
starts next Monday.
So now that's like our internal joke.
You know,
Yeah, okay, well, that's why you got.
I'm not coming back there.
Okay.
I am counting. Just for
How many units do you have?
There's essentially 2 on the south.
What? Singing, same call.
It's part of.
I gotta say that firm here. And I see the, it's not very challenging getting CCTV. Have you ever been in there? I've seen them big too. Great. They were saved.
So you're saying that if I were to that's been one of the issues.
We have equipment that's not designed for this.
That's number 1 and number 2. Some of it is oh yeah.
Oh, do you?
Well, it's something I don't. But the one of the nights because it's year-round day. The guys on the roads and I said, "There's no this and so I picked it up.
Try that. Take it away.
You all do your bike. I think running my phone next to.
Yeah.
I said, if you had, I have not answered my phone.
Yeah, no, I do. One of the directors, basically.
Yeah, oh yeah. All right, very good. I do not.
Good morning, everyone. We'll call the board meeting to order at this time. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start the board meeting off with introductions. Tracy, can we start with you, please?
Tracy Bowser, PCCG staff.
Wayne Howard, PCCD staff.
Rod Ruddick, Indiana County Commissioner, represent Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania.
Bill Wenner, MDJ, Dauphin County.
Sherry Leffler, PCCD staff.
Bill White, Pennsylvania State Police.
Julie Sokoloff, Constable, Montgomery County.
John Fowl, PCCD.
Deborah Sanford, Chief Counsel, PCCD.
Beth Romero, PCCD.
The first thing on the agenda is the election of chair. If I could ask the current board members who are here for any nominations for a chair for the board at this time.
We should have talked about it.
We should have talked about it.
Are there any nominations?
Major, would you do it?
Be the chair. I mean, this is only my second meeting.
I just, since all of our terms are expired, we don't know how long we'll all be here either, so that's, you know.
And just so you know, Major, it's annual. We have to do it annually.
Annually, per the statute.
Chair, so.
I don't know. I'm like everybody else.
I mean, John, I guess the question is, what do they do since everybody's terms are expired? I mean,
You
Right.
stay till they replace, and we have to force their hand because they're not going to replace.
And I will say, out on the Senate nomination, I think last week or the week before, they did put a placeholder out there. It says Constable's Education Training Board, but it's for Harry Walsh, who passed away 2 years ago. And the name that they put in there is just a placeholder. It's a member of the governor's staff. They do that to get it out there, and
On the
we
calendar.
know there have been names submitted to the governor's office. Various entities have submitted names. So, we make, but just with the budget and everything else, I wouldn't suspect we'd get anybody till fall. If anybody's actually named and then approved. So, hopefully by the December meeting, we'll have some more board members.
And at this time, I mean, if no nominations are brought forth, I would be comfortable running the meeting, or if there would be a volunteer that would, of the 4 board members that are
For
present,
today's
that would be
meeting,
willing to run the
someone just
meeting
chair.
today.
I nominate. I nominate Rod Ruddick
No,
to chair today's meeting. I don't want to say. He's going to declare.
I'm not sure I'm that prepared to do something like that.
You just follow.
My background is not necessarily in law enforcement, and so I think we have other people here at the board that probably have a better understanding of that. I would reach out. Julie, you would really be. You've done this for a number of years. You work with it every day.
Even if we just had a volunteer for today.
Yeah, just as,
that
that
would
would be
again,
fine.
like I said, hopefully by the December meeting, we'll have.
All right, I'll do it for
Okay.
today.
Okay, so Julie Slokoloff is volunteering to be the meeting coordinator for the day.
And then I just give it to Sherry and she does it.
So basically what we'll do is we'll start down through the action items. Do you want to do this part? Sure. Julie, go ahead.
It seems we have to take a vote on approving the minutes from the May 11 meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
May I have a voice vote?
Aye.
All favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
opposed. Minutes passed. Unapproved financial report. Do we have to vote on that?
Yes.
Well, and Beth will present it.
And Beth, yeah, Beth will present.
Beth will
okay.
present it.
So,
If you have any questions.
all right, so let's go to page 9 of your packet. And Beth will read the financials.
As you said, it's on pages 9 through 13. Under receipts, balance carried forward from the previous year, $3,378,619.71. The fees collected through the fourth quarter, so that's for the whole fiscal year, $1,763,262.73. Leaving total funds available of $5,141,882.44. And under the expenditures and commitments, total expenditures as of June 30th were $2,374,537.39. Total cumulative expenditures and commitments were $6,384,629.82, including administrative expenditures and commitments of $767,438.32. And that breakdown of those costs is on page 11. And bottom line, total uncommitted funds as of June 30, 17 is a negative $1,242,747.38. I should probably add on to that that includes commitments that go beyond the end of the fiscal year.
We always kind of freak out when we see that number, but we understand it. It's been explained to us a million times, and we not always understand how this works. Okay. Yep. Anyone have any questions? Okay, that was, who does the purchase order analysis and, costs and all of that, is that included?
Yeah, that's all
That's
included in
there
that.
just for, those were always backup documents over time the board had requested, so if you had any questions.
And then the fund cost projections report was not included in the original packet materials. That is provided as an addendum at the back of the packet.
Right, this time. Oh, at the back, I got you. Is there anything we need to discuss about that? The very, very back. It's just one sheet.
Yeah, the
Yeah, that one right there, Julie.
Oh, that's scary projection.
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
This is the one that shows.
That's scary out of
Good description.
projection. Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. So now I need a motion to approve the financial report.
So moved.
Second, someone?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. Okay, Wayne, you gonna do the instructor certification?
Yes. First instructor, and all the instructors on are from Temple University. The first gentleman is Carl Faulkner. Requested topic is general. He's currently a police officer with the Lafayette College Department of Public Safety. Has an associate's degree in criminal justice. He has 21 years of law enforcement experience, 1 year of instructional experience, and he's currently a firearms instructor for the Lafayette College of Public Safety. And you can see his certifications. He's NRA certified, and the staff would recommend certification of Carl Faulkner, the topics listed above. The second one from Temple University is Louis Mancini. Topics would be general. He's a special agent with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. He has a master's degree in criminal justice from Troy State University. 24 years of law enforcement experience, 1 year as far as being an instructor. You can see his last training assignment was Regional Defensive Tactics and Control Tactics. Certification was through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Commission, and the staff would recommend certification for Louis Mancini as well. Third one is William Mataliski. He's requested certification in general firearms. He's currently a special agent with U.S. Department of Justice. He has a bachelor's degree, 10 years of law enforcement experience, 2 years instruction, currently a firearms instructor, and he's also with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center as well. Staff would recommend that William Mataliski be certified to teach general and firearms. The next one is Raymond Talnick. Requested topic is general. He currently works with Phoenix Personal Defense. He has some college credits from Wilkes. 6 years law enforcement experience, 6 years of instructional experience. He's currently a certified PA constable and an NRA instructor, and staff would also recommend certification for Raymond Talent. The last one is Edwin Walker III. Requested topics are general and physical skills. He's currently with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, 15 years of law enforcement experience, as well as 6 years of instructional experience. His qualification is PPCT, Defense Tactics Instructor, and that's with the Montgomery County Department of Public Safety. And staff would recommend board certification for Edwin Walker as well.
And if I could just add before we take a vote, the 3 instructors that are coming through is just the general topic. They're being brought through just for that topic alone because we couldn't verify the training experience, law enforcement related training experience. So at least we'll get them on board with the program. They can then fulfill the 2 years that they would have to meet then to either become firearms or physical skills certified then later. Thank you, sorry, Julie.
Okay, so it's just as it reads. I mean, we wouldn't know that they were applying for something else.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
okay. All right, we need to vote approval of all these instructors put forth. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All are approved. Board meeting schedule, I don't think we have to vote on that, it's just there.
Yeah, we do have to take a
vote
vote.
on that, we have
Yeah.
to vote on everything.
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have a tentative, I guess, semi-permanent
Schedule for next
schedule
year.
for next year.
We'll get them on the books.
Okay, we'll let Sherry talk about the status of certifications and the setup.
Yep. I will briefly go through these 2. These are our routine updates for the board. As of July 12th, there were 1,248 constables and deputy constables currently active and certified with the program. Of those, we had 1,035, or 83%, were also certified to carry a firearm in the performance of their duties. Since the inception of the program in 1996, we have trained either through the basic training class or through the waiver examination 4,476 constables and deputies throughout the state. The next informational item is on the CET system, the Constable Certification, Education, and Training System. As of July 12th, there are currently 1,569 active registered constables and deputies who are registered in the CET system. And that would mean that they have a valid term of office. There are a total of 1,180 active and certified constables who are also CET users. And that is actually about 95% of the current active and certified constables and deputies in the population. Of those 1,569, we have 1,076 who have chosen email as their preferred correspondence method. I can tell you that has saved the program significant monies by not mailing out all of the information via U.S. mail and by doing it via email. So we have been, trying to implement things over the years for cost-saving measures. And then of those 1,569, we have 480 of those who are sharing their personal information in the CET system. Right now we have 58 registered users from 31 county clerk of courts offices as well. So we are increasing those numbers as we go along as well. Any questions on those informational items?
All right, I actually have a question first. At the last meeting, we discussed cost-saving measures of changing class size and various things. And we were going to discuss it more this meeting, or we're not talking about it today?
We are still working on our end to try to come back with some of the answers to the questions that the board had at that time.
Okay.
If not the November meeting, definitely by the February meeting we'll be bringing some things back. We have been working on the 2018 schedule, and we are implementing some of those cost savings measures as far as going from the 3 10-hour day, or the 3 days for a con ed. So we have Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. We're asking some of the other schools to pilot doing 2 10-hour days.
Okay.
So we are trying to implement some of those on our own as well.
So not the class size issue?
Yeah,
That's
not at
gonna
this
happen
point.
For next year at this
Correct.
point?
At this point, that will not
If we
happen.
pilot a couple of classes in 2 10-hour days and get feedback from constables and schools and see how that, because then we can also let the board know how well that's being received.
I think it will be received well. I know I go out of my way to take the 2-day class. It's really, it's easier. You're only driving twice, not 3 times. It is better.
Yeah.
And what's 2 more hours a day? Nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I just inquire,
Yes.
this, and I mentioned it coming in, just, when I had looked at the balance that exists for this organization, and you see the significant deficit that we're in. I know that Fred spent a considerable amount of time trying to get air, keep his head above water at least, in the organization. Do we have a timeline, or do we have any kind of personal demand on achieving that balance of balancing the budget? This is a real concern of any organization, and if we don't have at least a concept plan to move forward, I'm a little bit awkward that we don't at least discuss it openly here at a meeting like this to find out what our plans are.
Right, and so this board and this restricted receipt account, so the surcharge to start out has been set since 1994 at $5. So that takes legislation to change that, to increase that. I know PCCD has spoken to, various leadership in the legislature saying this is an issue, we need a fee increase, et cetera. There was this joint government study that came out 2 years ago, or almost 3 years ago.
Almost 3 years ago now, yeah.
And they recommended increasing it to $9.50. But until that happens, really the only other option we have is implementing any kind of cost-saving measures or trying to get the most training for the least amount of money. I hate to say it that way, but that's really, because there's really, the PCCD, the commission, they don't have any ability to change our income. We've met with AOPC, and we showed the board some of those. In fact, we met with them again about the surcharge collection. In one county, it takes 24 months before we see that $5 from the time it's assessed to the time it hits our bank account. Other counties, 11, 12 months. What's that county doing differently than another? And we can't control the counties on how, or the courts on how they collect it. So that's the problem. We're at the mercy of everybody else to get our money. But so really the only tool we have is how we choose to spend it. And so the deputy sheriff training program is the exact same. It's set up the exact same model. They're in the same boat. They just voted to stop. Their act requires them to reimburse the counties when a deputy comes to basic training. And the board and the commission voted to stop reimbursing counties because they just can't afford to at this point. To keep the training going, they had to stop reimbursing. They will at some point. They get a surcharge increase and the fund gets healthy. They had to do that in '98, and it took them almost 3 years to pay back reimbursements. So really, Commissioner, the only plan is that we have any control over is how we choose to spend the money. And that's why the staff is trying to look at what else can we do to save money or to do training differently.
You mentioned, John, early in your conversation here about legislation would have to be enacted. Where are we with that, and what's the next step in that? Are we pushing, I think, legislative change hard enough to get their attention? Do we need to do something uniquely different than what we're doing now? Who do we go to? To sit here and see that deficit, it's really concerning to me, and I don't think the board wants to carry this thing through until we find a solution.
Right, and I can say for the last year or so, I know the Special Court Judges Association, which is essentially the DJs, and And several constable associations have been meeting with, legislators, and there's actually supposed to be a draft bill. Senator Alloway put out a memorandum in the spring that he was going to introduce a bill, to do some other things with the constable system, to, fix some other things, but part of that was a surcharge increase. PCCD has talked with legislators, et cetera. It's the first momentum we've seen in a long time to do that. But in the scope of what the legislature's dealing with the budget and everything else, I wouldn't anticipate anything until the fall. The bill actually gets introduced or whatever. What that'll look like, we don't know.
We need to have a rallying point. Do we need to have a meeting with the Speaker of the House and sit down and say we need to have some assistance from your part to make this thing whole? It just seems as if the legislature's not going to reach out to us unless we push it. And I'm afraid if we don't at least take the initiative to do that, we're not going to get their attention. I don't want to come in and them come to us and say, what are you doing about this? Haven't you ever come to us about this issue before?
Right.
And protecting us.
What I will say, Commissioner, and I would defer to council on, because over the years, what role the board has in, approaching them for legislation. You as an individual, as a county commissioner or, constable or whatever, but as an entity, as a board, and like I said, I know PCCD, the acting executive director, has had several conversations with people, governor's office to include, about this, that, this is pending and it needs to be rectified.
John, is there a House committee or a Senate committee that would be responsible for overseeing this process?
Well, I mean, a lot of these kinds of programs, when legislation's involved, it'll go to the judiciary, committee.
That's the one then.
Right. And I know, like I said, there's been permutations of bills, trying to be written. So, but I don't know what's in them or what that looks like.
The other problem that we have is because it just involves so many entities. I mean, clearly, the entire MDJ system needs to be looked at, but then again, you're going to need 67 president judges to weigh into this. What's so different about the Sheriff's Association is there's 67 elected sheriffs.
Yes.
They're politicians.
They get more traction.
There's no traction here at all.
Correct.
Zero.
Correct.
Yet the fact we approve this budget at every meeting, I agree with the commissioner. I mean, I hate it. I mean, it's horrible. I hate to have the news media here go, what in the world is this? I mean, because it's a disaster. There needs to be a funding increase. Things have to be done better at our end, at the MDJ level. There's a whole lot that has to be changed, but we got to get the stakeholders at a table somehow. I mean, and I like this board, but part of the reason that I go, my term's expired. I don't want to see it go down the tubes because that's where it's going.
Right.
It's going. I mean, we look at these projections all the time. It's going down the tubes.
And you said it, Judge. The sheriffs, the interesting part is they ran into the situation in '98. And at that time, PCCD spent about a year and a half telling everybody that would listen, hey, the training fund's going down. And why it was Philadelphia stopped paying into it. They were collecting the surcharge, but they weren't paying it into the fund. So nobody wanted to do anything until the sheriff's board and the commission cut off reimbursements to the county. Then all of a sudden, within 6 months, there was legislation that was passed within a year. As the county commissioners got on board, the judges, everybody's like, oh, we're not getting reimbursed. We send a guy away to training and it costs us money. There's no hammer here to trigger all those entities, And
I got to agree. I wasn't at the last meeting, but obviously when everything was sent to me for today, and I absolutely agree with the major. I mean, and I appreciate what the staff has done with respect to trying to find areas that we can save a couple of dollars. But quite frankly, in terms of that budget, that's all we're saving, a couple of dollars.
Right.
And then we're talking about decreasing rounds for firearms training. Holy cow. Right. Who in the world would ever put a stamp on that one?
Right.
Nobody with my name's putting a stamp on that one.
And part of, in talking with the staff, my guidance to them was, part of it is we can still show we're doing good faith effort to try and manage the money. People, when legislators come down and say, hey, what are you doing down there? we have quite a documented history over about 7 years of going, this is what we've done. We haven't paid a stipend to the constables since '09. You know, that's in there, but we haven't paid it. So we've done a lot to do what we can to control costs, but we're at the point we can't control the revenue.
No.
Everybody else
And the
is involved in
revenue's
that.
less and less every year.
And again, I think it's amazing to think that there's a county that takes that long to forward money. So, I mean, what in the world is, I just don't get it. I don't
And on
get it.
top of
We're not the full time.
And listen, maybe it's
that problem,
Dolphin County. I'd love to know that.
there are less warrants being issued.
No.
Well,
There are municipalities that are having other entities do the work that the constables do. So
Well,
that's
And also too, and not to throw
Parking tickets, all
AOPC
that.
under the bus, but they also, you know, now you can go online and pay for a lot of those minor,
I
you know,
agree.
summary offenses. So even there's less work available to even issue to a constable.
Mhm.
Because people now can go online, pay their fines and costs, and there's no service of process involved.
But I'm gonna direct my next question to the legal counsel from a board perspective. Because of the fiduciary responsibility the board carries in managing this budget, so to speak, for us to vote positively to spend money when we are $1.2 million under, does that put us in a situation where we could be held accountable for voting for something in which we have no assets in which we're voting from?
I think one of the things that, working with the executive director and having meetings with and conversations with, I'll just say the money people in other departments of the government, sort of getting guidance on that issue. So one of the important things is notice to people that this is the predicament that the board is in, and that is something I've been in meetings with the executive director. And again, I'll say the money people in finance, other departments, to make them aware of the situation and to talk about different ways around it. So again, one of the most important things is the notice, so that this board is not doing something that's undercover, that everyone does not know about, and bringing to them some of the recommendations that staff has made as how to save money. So again, the most important thing I think at this juncture has been putting them and making everyone else aware of the predicament. So that when you are voting and then you're educated, which is what the staff has done on some of the avenues that are being looked at, that's what your vote basically is. You're voting on which particular avenues to take in terms of any of the proposals that have come down. So I think that's where the protection is. You're not willy-nilly voting, you're discussing, you're doing it from as educated a position as you possibly can, and relying on the executive director and the staff to make it known outside of this board the predicament that the board is in. I think that's where the protection is.
Okay. Have we documented this recently and sent a letter to the governor and say, Governor, we have a problem here, or someone in the governor's office to alert them this is the seriousness of this particular organization? I mean, it's certainly not a pension issue, I can tell you that, but everything builds to that level of deficit. And until we come to grips with this, I'm going to be awkward in voting yes on any kind of growth until we understand that we are protected here, or we see monies in line to offset our costs. I feel badly for the universities that are coming here today that are probably seeking support for another contract and looking for more money because we're not paying enough money. What do? We've got to find a way to balance that somehow, and I don't want to take it out on them. And I would vote for that if I knew I had a funding source. But right now, I don't see that.
And the one issue that has always been with this program, as well as the deputy sheriff, there's nothing in the statute that says train and certify only if you have the money.
That's right.
We're still obligated
And that's
to
a good
provide,
point, John.
and then you get back into the, as we discussed, well, I can provide training at a very cost-efficient method, but then the liability there of, training at the lowest bidder is not necessarily the best training, or,
No.
you can reduce training to meet the legal requirement, but it doesn't help the guy out there trying to do his job and work with the
And
courts.
value.
It doesn't prepare them to do what they're supposed to be doing. So there's a balance between good training and good financial management, and we're kind of, the money's now starting to hit that quality of, or it will hit the quality of training.
Yeah, yeah.
This
And we
was
don't want
written
that
how
to be
many
the case,
meetings
that's
ago?
why we're here.
Mhm.
And I apologize just because I'm a little bit frustrated here with this. I've never operated in a board situation where we've had this without a plan to fix it, or at least an act in place to take it to another level, to ask for their support and give us a letter that they're going to follow through with this in some fashion. So I just offer that, as a discussion here today more than anything else. I'm not going to put a motion out. I'm just going to have to be very protective, I think, of my own mind, of what's right and what's wrong here, and move forward. So.
Alright. Okay, executive session. We have to ask everyone in the audience to clear the room for a few minutes.
And we need a motion
Oh, we
to,
have to vote to go
To into
into executive session. We have a motion.
I make a motion.
Second.
So moved. Do we have to vote on that? No. The accuser? Or the accused? The guy.
I had that same exact story that happened on my career. The guy committed suicide. Yeah, we did the same exact thing happen.
Alright, did we hold our little vote to come out of?
No, we did not. We
executive
need to do that.
session? We'll do that right now.
I make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
So moved. All right, we're back on, we're live. And now we are ready for public voice. So, Ron, please state your name and
Constable Ron Quinn, PFOC in Center County. I don't have much to. I know we're all in a state of flux here and stuff. But one thing that was discussed at the last meeting, and I'm wondering where we stand as far as moving toward it, was I know we talked about, all video streaming and all these other things and stuff, and I've even had people approach me and say, well, why don't they just broadcast on Facebook Live and stuff? And I played devil's advocate already and stuff, but it's not a big thing. But one thing that we did talk about at the last meeting was at least the audio streaming, not live, but because of the microphones and everything's being recorded and stuff like that, being able to download the recording of the meeting so that if somebody wants to go into the website and then see the meeting and be up on all the issues and stuff, they can do that then. And then that way they can bring up either hopefully 10 more meetings, or bring it up to association members and stuff like that to be able to address their issues and stuff as well. Where do we stand right now, at least on the audio streaming, the delayed audio streaming?
Right. And my boss, Bob Merwine, who's not here today, he was taking the lead on that. And I can't tell you, because one of the issues too is the Commonwealth and stuff like that, off-site storage. It's not just legal, but it's also gets into, how are we going to do it? Because the state has IT contracts for various services, and those vendors meet that requirement, et cetera. So,
Well, where do they store them now? Because apparently we were recording these meetings anyway. Where is it being stored now?
right, it's being stored by a Commonwealth on a Commonwealth, server somewhere.
So the expense is already being done.
Right, and as I said, Bob Merwine's dealing with that. That's, his background is IT, et cetera, so I do not have an update for that.
Okay. I think we might have one next meeting then.
we'll see what we can do.
Appreciate it.
If you have any comments, just raise your hand and stand up and state your name. And
Paul Pape, Jefferson County. With the issues of the $5 and all that, I don't know where to begin, but I mean, the auditors are making it hard for the magistrates to do their jobs. With this 120-day rule that they come up with on issuing warrants, because now they're not issuing after the 120 days. we bring a warrant back, it's getting issued to the office and it's sitting in on the file. Or if you have 5 warrants on someone, they're issuing 1 warrant and including the cost and all the other ones, so the money's not getting collected. You know, raising the fee to $9 or $9.50 is not going to increase money. And a lot of these offices don't want to charge it or don't charge it. I mean, isn't that the purpose of the auditors, of auditing the books to see where their money's going, why it's not getting collected?
Well, I can tell you, just because when the Auditor General does the DJ office, you know, they'll contact us always like a year behind. So they'll contact us and say, you know, we're at this DJ office and we're looking at, you know, paperwork that's issued to Constable Pate, you know, and one of the things they check is, was he certified at the time, you know, when you were issued the paperwork, etc. But those findings that they, any findings they have go against the DJ, and I don't know if the judge can chime in at all, but so that's findings, and I don't know who you have to answer to on any findings. I mean, I don't know if that between AOPC and the president and judge, I guess, on what your process is. But we've discussed this for the whole life of the program. If a DJ says, well, you know, this guy doesn't have money, so I'm only going to charge $1 for the surcharge for the CETA fee instead of the $5, they can do that. They can lower it down.
I didn't know they could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we may only get, you know, $5 may be assessed, but we only get $1. So,
I mean, it's just, you know, we just keep talking in circles and nothing gets done.
well, and part of it is and just like your fees that are in the act, there's no.
It's a joke too.
Well, what I was going to say is there's no incentive, so to speak, that you guys get paid the fees that are in the statute, because your only recourse is to sue the county, or sue, you know, and that doesn't give you future employment if you go that route.
Well, yeah.
So it's the same thing with us getting our surcharge. If it's not being collected, it's not being assessed.
Well,
The agency doesn't have any recourse to go to a county and say,
I mean, it was good, you know, he's got instructors in there to teach the fee bill to the judges and in our class. But, you know, you had 4 or 5 different instructors teaching 4 or 5 different ways to each class. So that just screws up the judges more on how they think on effectuating a warrant, or you have custody release, you know.
but you also have 66 counties that view it differently.
Well, I know, you have a fee bill set by the legislators, which is the law. For 67 counties, not for eastern part of the state or the western part of the state.
Right, I don't disagree, but like I said, the biggest flaw is there's no hammer on the counties for, you know, the fees, whether it's your fees or our surcharge.
Well, and the auditors, what do the auditors actually do? What do they look for?
All
To make
they're
sure
look-
that the state gets their money?
All they're looking at is, because once the money's collected, it's considered state money, you know, that's allocated, whatever costs and fines that will end up to the state. And they're just following the path of the money. You know, what was assessed, was it collected, why wasn't it collected? And then the county, did they pay it into the appropriate, whether it's revenue or whoever, you know, timely and all that kind of stuff.
But is it actually good to recommend that these auditors are recommending that the warrants get reissued every 60 days or 120 days that they, you know, and what's good a warrant if you issue it and it sits in the desk? Even when you know you come up with a person and you find them later on and you go to the office and ask for the warrant back, they won't even issue it to you. They'll let it sit in the file and not even get served. So why issue a warrant? I mean, that's the same across the state doing that.
And again, it's, you know, because you have so many people involved, you know, no one person owns that or has that ability to correct that.
So they don't want the warrants. The state doesn't want the warrants served.
Sometimes it sounds that way.
Thanks.
Constable John Pisano from Indiana County. I've got a couple of questions. Why do we have a board?
Because it's created in the act.
Okay, if the state's not listening to you guys, then what's going on here?
Right, and I can't answer.
Why do we have a board?
Because it's statute, it's required a certain It's comprised of 7 specific people. to
It sounds like
comprise to meet
67
4
counties
times a
don't even
year.
acknowledge us,
Well,
including the governor.
And like I said, the board, there's nothing in the act that gives the board any kind of power or authority. The duties listed under the board are to create the training program, define the curriculum, approve instructors, basically run the program. There's no authority, power given to the board to go, hey, Dauphin County, you're not collecting our surcharge. They have no authority to do that. In fact, the deputy sheriff program, which is almost identical, the only outside authority they have is because a sheriff, when they hire a guy, by statute, they have to report it to the board within 15 days. So we know they have a new hire that has to go to training. And that board has the ability to impose a financial penalty on a sheriff if they don't report and send their guy to training in the time allocated under the act. And in 30 some years of that program, they only actually had to threaten that once and the issue got resolved. But this board doesn't even have that. There's nothing this board has under the act. So go out and, rectify the problems at the county level, even with our own surcharge.
So today, after this meeting, who are you guys gonna talk to about our problems then?
Right. And again, I've been with the program since it started. Okay? And this same issue has gone on and on, and it always falls on the lap of the agency. The executive director has to go out and talk to the legislator leadership, has to talk to the governor's office to make them aware of these issues and these problems. But that's about all that executive director can do. They can beg, plead, publish reports, document it, and until those people decide to do something, right now, board membership, until the governor decides to appoint somebody, we have vacancies.
Is the governor aware of the deficit we have?
I couldn't tell you if he personally is. This issue
How do
has
we
been-
know it's getting to Harrisburg where it should be getting to? How do we know where this
I
is
know the issue has been raised over the last
you don't
2.5 years.
You don't read it home back in the papers, so I don't know if the governor's seeing this stuff or not. I only read what you guys give me. I don't know where it went from here or where it's gonna go from here today.
Right.
But it has to go somewhere where we don't exist no more.
Well, I can tell you, I've personally sat in on meetings where these issues on both this and the deputy sheriff program have been raised. And we get a lot of, hey, yeah, we'll do something about it.
Right.
I get just as frustrated as you,
'Cause I really don't think raising it to $9.50 is gonna help us. Not whenever I see warrants sitting back home, and whenever you go in and tell the judge he's sitting down the street there, can I have the warrant back? No, I'm not gonna issue it. Because the auditor told him not to issue it after 60 days or 120 days. And then every time you get a warrant out of another county, and you call down there and they say, well, call our sheriff's department, they're in charge of it. They can't come up to my county on a summary warrant. They just sit down and these pile up, pile up, pile up.
And again, there's nothing this board or this agency can do about how the courts do their business.
Thank you.
One more question. You say that it basically sounds like that our program is also mirrored in the deputies program. We already know our fiscal and state of flux situation here on this board. What does it look like on the deputy sheriff side?
It's actually worse.
It's actually, yeah.
It's actually worse. Like I said, they under their statute, so when a county sends a deputy to basic training, it's 19 weeks. By statute, that training fund has to reimburse the county 100% of the deputy's base pay. Plus, we're paying for all the training. So when a guy goes to training, it's on average about $30,000 to train a deputy in 19 weeks, between the cost of the training and reimbursement. So they've had the same issue. Declining revenues, increasing costs. Their surcharge hasn't been increased since '98. So they recently voted, that board, to stop reimbursements to the counties. So that, because they just don't have the money available to continue training and reimburse the county.
So using the commissioner's argument over here, how are they facing that deficit situation? As far as approving.
They're in the same boat. But and I say this again, but what the issue is when they cut that reimbursement off to the counties, it now wakes up the County Commissioners Association because now they have a vested interest because they budget for that reimbursement. So if they hire a deputy, they're going to hire a new deputy. They essentially don't have to take into account the cost of training because they're getting that money back from the training fund. So if now they want to hire a deputy and send him to training, they're going to be out that money for how long until we can reimburse them? It might take several years. So now the County Commissioners Association has a vested interest to talk to legislators and get that rectified.
So basically, they're going to be operating in the red, and there's no problem with it. So there's no problem with us operating in the red to address his concern. Is that correct?
Well, there's going to come a point where you can't continue to operate in the red.
Yeah.
And
I think
who runs more of a risk then of basically falling to the wayside, us or the sheriff deputies?
I can't answer that, Ron. I don't know. When you say fall to the wayside, what does that mean?
Well, no, like you said, when the money runs out, basically the program has to stop then. So where do we stand in comparison? Who's going to be stopping first, constables or sheriffs?
And this was probably 15 years ago. Yeah, it was 98 when the deputy sheriff fund hit this point. I was in a meeting and I heard a legislator say, I don't consider it a problem until I hear from about 100 to 150 constituents. And I think that's interesting because to me that's one guy, doesn't mean they're all like that. But, the judge said earlier, the sheriffs, they're elected. They have a lot more clout.
So
right, but on a county level, there's less of them. So you can get 66 guys to agree more on a position or a view to go to the legislatures and say, we need this issue fixed. 1,300 certified constables, if even 500 of you guys could have the same agenda. And I think that's been, and I'm not slamming constables, but that's been the issue for the last 22 years I've been here.
Right.
Is constables want to fix the system, but they can't agree on the top 5 things that need to be fixed. And I think constables, if associations got together and said, yes, here, these 5 are our priorities for the legislator to fix, I think it would get done.
You were going to say something.
Organizations.
Yeah, I've said this before. There's this constant, and we all hear it, there's this constant conversation about, do we even need the constable service, period? Does it need to continue? I guess we've seen in Lancaster County now that President Judge down there said, no, constables don't get to work. I think the issue is that I'd love to know really what all of these president judges in the Commonwealth actually think of the system. And how do they, and of course, I know that the board here would agree, especially staff, that the PJs, what do they hear about the constable system? Usually a disaster. So that's what's stuck in that president judge's mind, some crazy disaster. And listen, there's crazy disasters everywhere. We all agree. But unfortunately, that's what they hear. And I think we have a very progressive president judge here. I'd really be interested in what Rich really thought. The 15 of us have never sat down with him to say, you know what, Rich, this is really how we feel about the constable system, that it really needs to survive and we need to do the best that we can. But there's one county. We have an approachable president judge that we could have that meeting. But what are the other 66, if there are 66 of them? I don't know. I really don't know. And I keep saying that the state police get their share of warrants out of my office. I have a large local police department, 65 sworn. They get their share. But my constable's very busy. He's very busy. I have one, but he's very busy. He does very well. And I really couldn't live without him. So, and rurally, I would think that across the Commonwealth, and it's a very rural state, I think you guys have your place, and you're going to have to continue, at least in the MBJ system. But the right people are never spoken to. And Bill Wenner in Dauphin County can't tell 66 other president judges, hey, you need to wake up about this disaster on this constable education board that I sit in. I'm more than willing to do my part, but as the commissioner said, I don't know how we get the proper stakeholders at the table. I mean, if there was an issue with the Pennsylvania State Police, there's an organization, God bless them, with the tradition, they got the clout to get something done. You know, we need the clout. I don't know how we get the clout. I just don't. It's frustrating. I think God bless Fred. I wasn't here when he resigned, but, you know, when I read that he resigned, that man put his heart and soul into this. That budget, every meeting we had, I could see the stress on that guy's face. I mean, it's horrible. It probably took years off his life because he cared so much about what you guys do. We all want to fix it. I don't know how to fix it.
There's definitely a system breakdown here. I mean, and it's very obvious to all of us that we've got to find a way to connect the dots here. I lean to Bill. I really think we have to revisit, I think, the AOPC and see what role they're going to play in this, because they're the ones that can really establish the mechanism for getting counties to respond back, because they have judges who are working in those counties. You can't let financial persons make decisions for operational requirements. That's the challenge we have. Now, I don't want to sit up here as a board member and say, if we have universities out there that are doing a great job in helping to set up training programs for constables across the state. And in fact, we're blessed to have that kind of support. If they know they have to cut back on their funding simply to get our attention and move forward, they're going to slight then the operational needs of the people who need it. And they may need to go to their legislators and say, we have a problem brewing here. If you don't understand that there's a role that you play, Mr. Legislature, in getting funding for us through the PCCD, and maybe it's the AOPC. Obviously, right now, it's not through the Constable and Education Training Board. That's not our function. Our function is training. Our function is not reimbursement. I mean, that's the challenge we face. You may have to get that word out. I know, Mike, you got Dave Reed sitting in Indiana County. You got Don White sitting in Indiana County. Maybe they didn't know about this. They have their own situation with shortfalls in their budget. We might as well add a little bit to their caseload, just to make sure they understand that if we want to operate, we have to operate as a team here. The question is, who's more important? No one's going to put that out there until we decide collectively of how that works. We support constables, we support the sheriff's department with everything we have as county commissioners, believe me. But if we can't pay our bills, we have to make decisions. And we have to have a balanced budget by law. By law. And we would have to make those cuts. I'm surprised that it's gone this far without getting addressed. And we've got to maybe kick this up somehow, and maybe we'll find a way to do that. I have to become a little bit more informed as to the process here, but I know I don't normally give up on things like this if I have a role to play in it. So, but I work with the team here and knock on some doors and say, come on, let's get moving on this.
But you have to understand, a couple people talking to a couple people isn't going to do it.
Yeah,
no. They talked about the clout of the state police. We have a very strong union, and that union hires lobbyists. Mm-hmm. And that's the reality of what we do. I mean, I hate to say it, I hate to put it that way, but everybody needs to be on the same page within the organization, which would be your Constables Association. You need to have talking points lined up, disseminated to 1,000+ people that are willing to say, hey, this is my livelihood. I'm going to go into that local office for that politician. I'm going to bring their attention to this problem and to this deficit and be a squeaky wheel. That's the only way it gets solved. And, as this board serves a different function. This board isn't supposed to solve your problem. We'll certainly contribute and do what we can, but you go in and talk to, we have, within the state police, we have a legislative affairs office. So we have people dedicated just to dealing with legislation that's coming up and how it's going to affect us. Because a lot of times legislators will put forth legislation without thinking it all the way through. So I'll give you an example. They want to increase the speed limit to 70 miles per hour. nobody really has a problem with that. It's like, okay, effective this date, we're at 70 miles per hour. Well, who's going to change all the signs? Who's going to now, recalculate costs and all those other things that came into play when the legislation's enacted, it happened, now we're playing catch up to try and fix a problem. So we're proactive about that to say, hey, this is how this is going to affect our organization, but you have to come together as an organization.
Right.
You have to be going into your legislators. When we need something done within our union, everybody is given talking points. It's emailed to them. You need to go out there if you want this to happen. And we do it.
We're in the middle of that now.
Well, that's the problem.
I'm sorry,
That's
go
the
ahead.
problem throughout the state. We have too many different organizations, as constable organizations, going this way instead of coming together.
Yeah, I apologize because I truly don't know enough about your organization, and I feel weird about talking about something that I'm not real knowledgeable about. But that has to be the first step. You're all fighting for your livelihood. You have.
If we were like this, the state police, where we were together as brothers or whatever, it probably wouldn't be this bad right now.
Well, and there was only one state association, and they're the ones who got this training act introduced, and passed.
Right.
And they were still the association probably for about the first 10 years of the training, 8 years. But then they're also the ones who pushed and got the fee increase in 2009.
Right.
So
and I was
to reflect what the major said, one voice does a lot more.
Right.
Go back to that legislator saying, well, if I hear from 150 people, it's an issue.
Now we have too many that went off on their own, and everyone's trying to.
Well, that's what I say. You're not gonna get everywhere. And I know there's different associations, but you guys have to agree on 4 points, 5, whatever they are, but 5 critical things. Because really, after that, sometimes over 22 years, they've introduced all kinds of bills to fix the constable system. And probably the only one that came close to being passed was literally like a 3-page one, because it only addressed 2 issues. And the ones that have tried to fix everything in the 20 pages, they don't go anywhere.
Sam Vinegar, Deputy Constable from Monco, and new. I'm also an instructor for Temple, trying to help elevate the program, and admittedly and acknowledged huge issues amongst the constables in the Commonwealth. But as a board that does training and certification and answers to the governor's office, as I guess we all do eventually, do you put a formal recommendation in? You're not going to make legislature change, but you see what's broken as well, right? And is there a formal report or recommendation that, hey, these are the top 5 things that we see that need to be addressed?
Right. No, there's
so there's got to be alignment. Both sides. If we all get aligned, are you going to be aligned?
Right.
With those types of things as recommendations?
Well, here's one thing on this financial issue. The board is required by statute to publish an annual report every year. And for probably the last 8 years, in that we have to discuss the fiscal stuff. And we put in there that the fund is going down, revenues are down, training costs are up. We've even put in there all the things every year that the board's enacted to try and cost savings. That goes to the governor's office, it goes to the legislators. This board and this agency can't go out and actively solicit legislation. We can't go, hey, Senator so-and-so, introduce this or whatever. What does happen is when associations or a bill gets introduced, they will bounce it, they will send it to the agency and go, hey, what do you think of this? And that's our opportunity to go, well, that's not going to work for these reasons, or, here's what we would recommend. We can't go out and actively pursue it. If it gets introduced and it comes to us for review, yes, we do provide that feedback. And we have in the past.
So reactive as opposed to proactive.
And it's basically, state agency, we can't go out lobbying for legislation. There's channels to do that, as we've discussed, talking to, the executive director has channels that he can go and say, hey, this is an issue. Yes.
Thank you. Chris Savage from Montgomery County. Eastern Director for Pennsylvania State Constable Association, President of Montgomery County Constable Association. I want to say first, thank you to everybody that's up there, whether you're paid, stipend, or volunteering. Thank you for what you're doing. You don't hear that enough, and I know that, and I really want to say thank you. I think that we as constables, and I'm new, right? I've been here 2 years. I've got 12 years of experience at a Fortune 50 pharmaceutical company, so doing business. I get the financial concerns. I work on the financial side of the world. I work in the operations end of the company. I get the challenges. I think that something along the way has fractured the system. I won't even attempt to go back and pinpoint where that started, but certainly as we move forward, you guys are challenged with the largest problem, from what I can see in the budget projections in history, that you've ever faced. This seems unprecedented. And within 2 years, it looks like, for all intents and purposes, we're broke. So first question, where I'm getting around that is, what is the plan when we are broke, right? We're cutting to the bone, in my opinion, now. And it seems like we're headed in that direction, and we're throwing a Hail Mary. But I don't see any strategy, and you're talking exactly what I'm hoping to hear, right? You're saying the things where the problems are. But if we don't get that Hail Mary, what happens? What is the next step? Just
Well,
curious.
I mean, there is going to come at a certain point that, we can't pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is, contractually, the comptroller, they oversee the actual on the money side, our fund, because it's a restricted receipt account. They do not let us anticipate revenues. And when we enter into a contract to provide training or whatever, we have to have cash in the bank. So they don't let us enter into $1 million contract for 2 years if we only got $50,000. So there's going to come a point where the comptroller essentially will be the one to cut us off. They're going to say, hey guys, you don't have enough money in there, so we're not paying any more bills. And I'm talking very broadly, generally.
Sure.
But they will, I'm sure, start talking to us going, hey, on the average, what you pay out every month, what your invoices you pay out, we're looking here to give us a realistic, these are projections, they always change. And keep in mind, when we have contracts end at the end of December, because we cancel classes, etc., we have money back. So it just kind of kicks the can down the road a little bit, But there would come a point where the comptroller goes, hey, by, February, you guys are going to be broke. And really at that point, really the only plan is for that executive director and the commission to go to the governor and the senior leadership and say, we either stop training constables and stop certifying them, which impacts courts, etc., or you guys fix this. And really, that's not a plan, but that's really the only realistic way it's going to happen.
Okay, I appreciate that. So without that lifeline, right, and at that point it's a plea for help from the well, throw more money in. That's a problem, obviously. So I don't know if you've done operational planning for that. That seems like it's in the forecast now where it wasn't prior, it wasn't previously there. My question is, and I want to move forward now, for how do we resolve that? And it seems like what I'm seeing is that we've got a fractured system in that we're all sitting here as constables that are out doing work, looking for answers from you all. And I'm not sure that that's the answer. And so what I don't see in place is a system or any mechanism to make changes at the local level, which in Pennsylvania, it's where it's pushed down to. Local level is law, right? They hold the keys to how things work. Everything from your emergency manager all the way to us. So it's great that we have a state fee bill increase, but what $15? Let's be crazy, right? Let's be wild over here. We get a $15 increase, still don't collect it. Even more of a reason to pull it off from each docket. The work needs to be done at the county level, right? And so maybe this is where I change my discussion from you folks at the table to my colleagues on this side. That what are you guys doing? I'd love to hear this. What are you doing at the county level to meet with your PJs and to engage with them to find out why this isn't happening, or how do we? Because these guys aren't staffed for that. Is what I'm hearing, right? You do not have adequate staffing to go out and do a survey of 66 counties.
Yeah,
Tracy, Wayne, and Sherry.
Yep. So that's not adequate staffing to solve that problem, right? You've got 13 or whatever Tracy thinks, or Sherry thinks for the numbers, but you've got over 1,000 constables out there. I have to imagine that some of these groups are organized enough to have a logical, robust, relevant, good conversation with our PJs to save our own skins. How do you engage us to create that?
Here's one thing, and I've said this for 20-some years, irregardless of how many associations, of 1,300 certified constables, again, even half of you, go forward and talk to your legislators, your president judges. The one thing in all the attempts to fix the constable system is they've never found a cost-efficient way to replace you. You collect a lot of state and local money. You work, your fee for work. So if you're not working, you're not getting paid. If they got rid of constables and gave it all to the sheriff's office, well, that sheriff, whether they serve 10 warrants in a day or 1 warrant, he's getting paid X amount of dollars, he's got benefits or not. There are a lot of sheriff's office, but still. So you guys, one of the things you have to make clear to them, because I don't think people at a higher level understand that the amount of revenue you bring in for the state, for the local level, and what's going to replace you? There was even a bill, this was 15 years ago, we'll go to private process servers. Well, the more it gained traction was, we got to regulate those guys because we want them to be bonded. We want them to be, So then you're right back to the same. You got to have a state entity overseeing that and regulating it. And, it was essentially the same thing.
So, John, that's where I want to go. Exactly what you're giving me, those talking points. I would love to see this board put together a county level training program, right? One program. Everybody comes, we all learn how to engage our county government with those same speaking points consistently, and then take information and bring it back and try to get around that. We can be your staff, but you have to put that together. This group clearly is not going to get there, right? We're just not. It would be wonderful, right? I have no problem going to my president judge, right? Having that conversation. It's not really that great if it's not happening everywhere else at the same time. That's a local level issue.
And I hate to sound like a bureaucrat, but I don't think that's doable in a capacity of the board. There's a fine line between our role, as we've talked about.
Right.
I can't show up as a representative, staff for the board and legislator so-and-so and say, hey, we need this fixed. I'm supposed to implement the actions of the board, their day-to-day job. So, and that's why it really has to be on you guys. There's a fine line. The executive director can beat on doors until he's blue in the face, but he can't, go talking about sponsoring legislation. And he can suggest. We can give him all kinds of recommendations.
So as they say in West Texas, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And if you want to kick it back and to the associations, that's perfect. I think that's fine.
I think you guys as associations need to meet and come up with those talking points and say, this is what, throughout the state, we're all going to go hit them with the same talking points.
And I think it's the board's responsibility to provide you with whatever information that you're requesting of us.
Okay.
You want financial information, you want to know where we're at, you want to know
Training
projected
statistics,
costs. We'll be able to provide whatever that you're requesting.
Yeah.
But you have to come together as an organization.
So that's the next point I wanted to get to. I heard it seasoned in with many comments from the board today, and I think we've all felt it. The fractured view from 3 organizations, maybe 4, maybe 5 in the future, God only knows, right? As pressure is increased on the system, I can understand it becomes even more splintered. That seems like the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle to overcome is that the state police don't have 3 unions. You've got 1. And when you go and speak, you have that. And so this is where I think we need to come together and stop putting Christmas tree bills in that are so heavy they fall over and just focus, right? Just put the crosshairs on the bird and pull the trigger. That's how you hunt. And until we get there, I think we're going to be in the same situation. So comments for both sides of the table today, and I appreciate you hearing me and listening to some of my frustration. I do look forward to engaging folks on the board, so I guess, Sherry, I'll start with you as a liaison.
That's fine.
To try and gather some of that information and
no
putting
problem.
some talking points that are relevant and current together to begin having those. And if we can duplicate that 50, 60 times, or at least 13 or 14 times for the larger counties, maybe that'll start to make an impact.
If I can also follow up, I mean, I hate to refer to as this doomsday clock, but to some degree, at some point, the money's gonna be done. So then we're faced with all training stops, everything just comes to a screeching halt. I think I can say this with almost 100% surety. I doubt whether those men and women who are the president judges of these 67 counties or educated people are going to want anybody out there, even though you're independent contractors, you're serving legal process. I doubt whether any of those men or women are going to want people out there carrying guns, not going to training. That's the one thing that's going to hit them. So that, I think that has to be what you got to carry forward, because it's going to stop.
Yeah.
You know?
But so to evolve that conversation, it becomes, but I have a sheriff's department that does that kind of stuff. And so we have to educate to say, yes, but that's the expensive option, right? There's mobile options. Don't go that way because it costs your county more money.
And I'm not trying to speak for the sheriffs, but on the sheriff's side, you know, I deal with the Sheriff's Association. There are a lot of sheriffs that are quite honest. They don't want the DJ level stuff. They don't want all that landlord-tenant stuff. You know, they got enough work at the Court of Common Pleas. I mean, there are plenty of sheriffs that told me, yeah, I don't want that. I want that part. So
That's good information. So thank you. I appreciate hearing the comments today.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Barry Betts, Lehigh County. You were talking about the counties shipping money back, their CETA fund into here. Is there any way that can be broken down as to what counties are sending the money back? Can we get a copy of something like that?
yeah, we have that. In fact, we just, Sherry and I just met with AOPC to refine our request, the data they gave us. Just we want to try and look at it and see if we can define it a little better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had
a better idea. Like I said, if it's my county, I would like to go to them and say, hey, we're having a problem here.
Yep.
And I believe the rest of them would like to do the same thing. If their county is down, would it be broken down over the last couple of years? Or is it just?
Yeah, the data that they provided us was the last six
years. Yep.
That would be good. That way we can compare as to what is going on as far as the money that we're receiving.
Right, and that's what we were looking at, because they see what's assessed in the system on the CFE and what was collected for that year.
Okay.
And, you know, obviously there's a difference.
So it would be, like I say, it would be a good idea if we could get a hold of something like that so we can look at it also and then go back to our counties.
Right, and I will say this because I can see you guys might have to request that directly from AOPC. And just because how AOPC, you know, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, at that point then, would you let us know what request we have to make? Because we have to give it specific. So I want to make sure we have the specific wording for that particular.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can tell you how to do the request to AOPC.
Would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we can bring more information on that at the November meeting once John and I get a chance to sit down and look over the new data we got from AOPC.
Okay.
So
Sounds
hopefully
good.
by November we'll have that back to the board.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Got a motion to close the meeting for adjournment?
Any motion? Second.
Vote?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you all for coming.